roll. Councilwoman Gavarrecki.
Present.
Councilman Templin.
Present.
Councilman Cisco.
Present.
Councilman Hayes.
Present.
Councilman DiGiulio.
Here.
Councilman Keenan.
Present.
Mayor Mategas.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir.
We are now into the special meeting tonight, and for the purposes of looking at whether we will untable for discussion the emergency manager April 9th memo. So, and I thought I heard Mr. Keenan said he would move that we untable.
Support.
Support by Councilwoman Gavarrecki. We have untabled, so April 9th is back for discussion as to what the council would like to do.
I'm sorry, we need a vote, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. We will take a vote, and I suspect because we had to divide, we'll take it as a roll call vote.
Okay. Mark as such. And that, get my cheat sheet here. Okay, we'll start the roll call in alphabetical order as stated. This is a motion, I guess, would untable the item. Councilman DiGiulio.
Yes.
Councilwoman Gavarrecki.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
No.
Councilman Keenan.
Yes.
Mayor Mategas.
Yes.
Councilman Cisco.
Yes.
Councilman Templin.
Yes.
The yeses have it.
No, we are untabled. All right, that was step.
This is only for discussion, correct, Mayor?
Yes.
Just for discussion.
Oh, you know what? We actually have an agenda up here, and I don't know if everybody saw it, and the city attorney pointed out that once we've untabled, we have a meeting, and what we did was we moved citizens' comments because there's just this one item. And so if you would like to come forward and make comments about the manager's April 9th memo, which is basically a memo to discuss the $3.3 million that you've heard discussed to apply for an emergency loan to the state of Michigan. So we'll go to the citizens at this point.
Brian Deagle, Elm Park. I just want to reiterate that you're borrowing money to have a surplus. And your surplus isn't going to cover every single emergency that could possibly come up. What would happen if you had a disaster that it costed, we didn't have $7 to $10 million? What would we do at that point in time? Do we go underneath receivership, or do you go to a state for an emergency loan at that point in time? Are we borrowing money? Because it just bothers me when you borrow money just to have extra money around. I mean, you don't do that. You don't get an extra credit card because you can get an extra credit card. If you borrow money because you need it, and you're saying you're justifying it because you don't know what's going to take place in the future, then borrow $20 million. My point is, you can't possibly cover every single thing that's going to come up in the future. And if our numbers are so bad that we can't project based upon history of what we're going to spend in the last 3 months, then we need more different types of people to take a look at our finances. You need to borrow money when you need to borrow money, not just to have extra money around, because the extra money isn't necessarily going to cover everything that possibly can come up. Thank you.
Any other citizens? See none, so we'll close the citizens' comments, go to the council. Mr. DiGiulio, I'm sorry, I had to cut you off there because I didn't follow the agenda. So you wanted to do something for purposes of discussion?
Well, we're discussing it now?
Well, you said you wanted to do something for purposes of discussion. I
Well,
assumed you wanted to make a motion.
No, I just meant that I wasn't gonna vote, I didn't wanna vote yes or no on the subject, I just wanted to know we were gonna discuss it. That's what I was voting on, to open it to discuss. So that's what we did, correct?
Well, I think we need a motion to have something to discuss. And the item is what is the council's pleasure?
So what's the motion you want to read what you have typed here, Mayor?
I think that the emergency manager's made a reasonable proposal that she wants to take to the state, that indeed we know that she's going to take to the state, and our resolution is a recommendation that we agree that the 3.3 million is a necessary requirement at this time.
I'm going to kind of take some of your notes here. I'm going to make a motion that we support the emergency manager in to increase, or for the $3.3 million loan, but with the caveat that if the anticipated $329,000 from the building authority is received prior to May 1st, that the loan would be reduced by whatever that exact amount would be for the purpose of discussion.
You have a second? Oh, okay.
Could you repeat that, to apply for the 3.3?
Motion is he's recommending that we support the emergency manager's application for an emergency loan of $3.3 million, subject to any funds that we can receive before May 1st from the building authority, who is winding up its affairs at this point because the last bond, you don't have to put the rest of this in, but any funds that come from the emergency, or from the building authority before May 1st, right?
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cisco has seconded. Do either of the proponents want to speak first? Mr. Keenan?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we tabled this matter, at least my vote to table the matter last week was because there was really 3 questions that I had that were brought up by residents that I didn't have the answer to. And I felt like it was important to do the due diligence. I met with Ms. Parker and Ms. Foltz for roughly about an hour or so on yesterday, with those questions and some others that came up during the discussion. And I got what I felt like were sufficient answers. One of the questions, or one of the comments that were brought up from the microphone was that under Public Act 436, that Ms. Parker had the ability, much like, and I'm paraphrasing here, much like what she did with the police department, to dictate to the pension board terms of payment, and that she could let them know the interest rate she was willing to pay and the time frame she was willing to make it, and that was within her powers. She shared with me that was not a correct statement, and certainly you can jump in if I say something wrong. That she did not have that ability. The only way that she could affect the outcome, I think, of the board would be to remove all the members and to replace them with people of like mind that would just go with what you wanted to do. And I don't think that that's a very viable or smart option, and certainly wouldn't take place in the time frame that needed to be done. The second thing is that there was a question about a letter that was sent off to the governor, and I think Councilman Hayes brought it up earlier, that stated that she had an agreement with the pension board to pay back a loan over 20 years, and that we were told that she had an agreement to pay it back over 5 years. So I got clarification from her, and I did share it earlier, and I have a copy here of page 5 out of the actuarial report that does kind of coincide with what she shared with me, that was not to cover the non-payment from the 2013 fiscal year. And then the other question was about a fund balance in the general fund. And I think that her explanation was very satisfactory to me. I'm sure not to others, but you know, one of the things that I do know, at the end of the year, when we have the auditor come in and he basically says what the budget was, what was spent, and this is what's left. And she alluded to it again earlier, is that a lot of this money is earmarked for different situations. And, you know, so like police and fire, you know, the $2.6 million or whatever comes in, that's specifically for police and fire. You know, even if that is in the general fund, you can't use it for anything else. And there was other, you know, the water and sewer fund is earmarked. And even it was brought up earlier about the possibility of borrowing from the water fund, but a lot of you that come to meetings and have come for years will remember that when Plant Moran first came in and this council was seated, they immediately flagged that as inappropriate, and we ended up having to pay that money back and transfer funds back. And there was even money taken out of the Southfield lease property that we ended up having to pay back too, which kind of further exasperated our debt when we thought we had money that was paid, and we had to take it back out of the general fund and put it back into different funds. But I did have opportunity to talk with Ms. Parker about what the actual cash flow was right now, and that was not sufficient based on what, you know, again, I'm not going to steal her thunder. What Ms. Parker shared with me is every time she writes a check to pay a vendor or what have you, Ms. Bird, you know, gives her back some documentation that says this is what the check was and this is what the cash flow was at that point. And she shared that with me, and it was not enough to cover the debt service that's moving forward. So those were the three questions that I had, and I got them answered at least satisfactory to my point. And then I think that there was other people that had some questions, and some of them were brought out even in this Gavreki's email. So with that, I'm good to go.
I'm going to go and ask if there is anyone that wishes to speak against the motion.
I would.
Councilman Hayes.
I appreciate my good friend Bob's having had the opportunity to get questions answered. I too asked several questions in writing. I got no answers, and therefore in good conscience I can't support this loan. And when I asked for it, I thought things that should be readily available. I know that they are available, but they were denied me for reasons best known to those who denied them. And I had asked very pointed questions, and there may have been very good answers, like Bob's convinced that his answers are very appropriate, and he's confident in them. I didn't have that opportunity, so therefore I have to vote no. Thank you.
Any other people who wish to speak again?
You know, we're taking a vote today on a loan to pay the pension fund in Allen Park. I think the council and the citizens have a right to know what we are paying for, as well as how our tax dollars are spent. I've requested today at the clerk's office, and I received a receipt for it, I requested that in writing that every pensioner in Allen Park, I'd like to know what their pension is and how many years they had. That's real important, how many years they worked here to get a pension. None of us seem to have that knowledge. And I've requested it today from the clerk's office and hope I get that knowledge. I can't in good mind vote for something when I don't have all the answers. And I've been asking this for the last 6 months, that I've been given a copy of what the pensions are and how many years they worked to get that pension. Thank you, Mayor.
Through the chair, point of clarification, I just want to point out, it's not my office you're actually asking the pension board. Okay, so it's not, I don't believe in council people asking for anything from me, but that is the pension board, okay? I want that clear.
Could that be passed to them, Mike?
Yeah, oh, it was directly given to them, and they are on
Thank
it
you.
right
Well, that's
now.
why I gave it to you, is I was
Yes,
hoping
no.
you passed on to the right authority.
No, thank you.
I understand these things, but
Mr. Cisco, you had a second. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Just a couple of things. I think Mr. Keenan explained everything very well. I think he got the answers that we might have all been looking for. But I just want to say one thing. You know, there are some people that have a tendency to look at the big bottom lines, and in municipal finance, I believe, you have to go through the different line items and look, which is why I concentrated on line items. because there's different funds that can't be spent in certain things. So you get a not a clear picture. You might have a fund balance at times, but it's only can be used as certain things, and then you still could not be able to pay some things because you can't touch certain funds. So, as I said before, municipal finance is different than regular business practices. And one day, I don't know how we can, maybe we can have a workshop on municipal finance. Maybe we could have Plant Moran come in here on one of those days when they're making money and give us a little workshop on municipal finance. What might be helpful for everybody to understand, you know, the budget that we have. That's it. Thank you.
Is there any other council person who hasn't spoken wish to speak at this point? I want to make one statement then, if there's no other council people, because I don't think we've thought about what's happened here. The actuaries for the pension board set every year the contribution levels that have to be made, and they have to be made from the city. Now, some of those are going to come from special revenue funds, some of them will come from the bulk of it comes from the general fund. But I look at it, the fund is presently at $82 million. It's approximately 80% funded, which is very good. And 55% of the fund is an obligation of the general fund. When we didn't make the general fund's contribution of $2.6 million, that money did not get invested. Over the period of time that they didn't have this money, the stock market went up 40%. So if you say, you know, 55% of the fund is stock, and they'd have kept 55% in stock, 55% of the $2 million, it's going to be some number. It's going to be 1.5, 1.6, put 20% on it. So we're $400,000 poorer in the pension fund because we didn't make our payment timely. Now, we didn't get sued and didn't get a judgment debt, which could have happened if Ms. Parker hadn't taken other steps here. But the $400,000, remember, is going to come from somewhere. Now, hopefully the stock market will continue to climb and we won't have to make larger payments as we had when the stock market was going down for 3 or 4 years, which increased our payment. But it could potentially, the $400,000 is a payment that if everything stays flat, pension contributions, we have to make it up. Taxpayers have to make it up. You have to realize that the delay in this thing into the future is potentially costly to us and will increase the pension contributions that will be determined by the actuaries for the pensions. So it seems to me that we need to get it paid as timely and as quickly as we can and have them make, and they have good investment counselors and they've done, you know, very well, but we need to put the money in their hands so that it reduces the burden of the pension contributions we have to make to that fund. Thank you. Is there any other statements anybody wishes to make?
I would just say, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm just saying there's more than one way to skin a cat. I think that's what Mr. Diebold is saying. It is not required that we borrow this money to accomplish our ends. That's what Mr. Diebold said. That's what I say. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you have some comments too after the council.
Are we at least 80% funded on the pension plan?
I believe we're 71%.
71% funded?
Yeah, as of the last report, 71%.
When that, through the chair, when that report came in, I want to say we had 72, 74 million.
It's about 72 million.
Okay, so we had gone up 10, when I opened the last statement, from what I heard, it was 82 million.
Yeah, that's the state.
That's where he's getting that number.
That's where the number I got, which moves up the funding level. And the 80% is one of those critical numbers that the state and everybody else looks at to see that your pension accounts are very close to that 80%. Otherwise, they feel you better be doing additional funding.
Are we there then or not?
I think we are.
We're at the 80%?
Yeah.
So we're what the state wants us to be at?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I was just saying, I thought the pension fund was about 82 million.
Right.
Is that
But
correct?
we're talking about the percentage as
And
to
the
the
percentage
total
I thought was
liability.
around 77%.
And don't get me wrong, Ms. Parker's going off the actuary report, which was done when the market was down, which she has to go off of, so.
Okay. If there are no further comments, I'm going to ask for the vote on that matter. All in favor, say
Parker
aye.
wants to
Oh, Ms. Parker.
Let her have a friend.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to share some additional information with the council as far as how the decision was made to even consider the loan, the emergency loan. So I want to just pass this out. There's two documents here. One related to a review by Plant Moran. I've been in discussions with them, and they put together, their assessment of whether this is something that is needed for the city. And I'd just like to maybe touch on a couple of the comments in their information. And then secondly, through the state, we have a financial advisor that provides recommendations and assists the city related to financial issues. And so with the Plant Moran letter, I'm just going to read maybe a couple of paragraphs, starting with the third one. These payments of $3.3 million are not included in the existing 2013-2014 budget. While the current year budget does not project a surplus, it is just a projection at this time, and it is not enough to cover these additional payments. The year is only partially completed, so we cannot be sure that all the revenues will come in as projected. In addition, there are typically audit adjustments for county tax chargebacks and such that cannot be fully anticipated. It would be prudent to wait until the year is over and the financial data is audited before relying on a set level of surplus. The city started the fiscal year in a deficit of about $700,000. If the city were to liquidate the $3.3 million of liabilities by paying them out of this year without any emergency loan proceeds, the city would once again be in a deficit. As you know, the current amended budget projects a budget surplus for the year of $3.1 million. However, if the city were to pay the liabilities above for a total additional unbudgeted expense of $3.3 million, the city would end up adding $200,000 to the deficit rather than whittling it down. Reducing the deficit and building appropriate reserves should be the city's priority, not increasing the deficit. Ending the year in a deficit would require an additional deficit elimination plan and concurrence from the state. This would also push back the city's emergence from a deficit situation and most likely would prolong the city's governance by an emergency manager. So I just wanted to point that out to you. The second item is from Baird, who is our financial advisor. And in their information, they've provided several documents. There's an excerpt from the Emergency Municipal Loan Act. There's also two scenarios related to an emergency loan for 7 years and then one for 10 years. And there's also some recommendations that they provided. And one is the loan would stabilize the general fund and reduce the need to borrow for cash flow purposes, which isn't something that we talked about, but again, if the cash flow isn't there, that's going to create a problem. It protects against the unexpected loss of tax revenue associated with the new personal property tax law and subsequent over approval. And it also protects against the unexpected loss of tax revenue associated with pending tax appeals. So I just wanted to provide this information to you. If you should have any questions, feel free to you can ask them now or give me a call at a later date.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the matter?
just would comment that I don't think these numbers referred to by Plant Moran match the budget document we have, so I don't know. They're off somewhat, so I don't know how closely they're communicating.
Well, and that's my point, you know, the number has changed several times.
When Mr. Debo, in his interpretation, said that the $700,000 deficit we started the year with would be taken care of before this thing, so that
Still end up with 2 more days.
still on up to 2 after 2. So I think there's some confusion here, and there's such a rush to get this, that's just my concern.
I'm going to take a roll call vote from the clerk, please.
Okay, there was a motion by Keenan, supported by Cisco, to support the EM to apply for the 3.3 loan, subject to any funds we can receive from the building authority be used, and reduce the loan accordingly to the funds available prior to May 1st, 2014. Is that an acceptable resolution?
Yes.
All right, we'll start the roll call. Second, alphabetically, we will go Tina Gavarecki. Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
No.
Councilman Keenan.
Yes.
Mayor Mategas.
Yes.
Councilman Cisco.
Yes.
Councilman Templin.
Yes.
And Councilman DeGiulio.
No.
The yeses have it. The resolution does pass.
The memo that I had sent to the council had 2 items there, 3 and 4. I think the resolution that we just passed took care of items 1 and 2. But the question is where does the money from the building authority, what does it go against? My inclination would be to apply it against, I'd ask for a resolution from us to apply it against. Do we need to?
I think I clearly understand what your intent is. If we receive the $329,000, I'll apply that towards the $700,000 payment related to the Southfield lease properties, which would reduce the loan balance.
And also that we will have our payments current to the, for
We are
13
current.
and 14 will be current to the pension board by the year end.
That's correct. We are current.
We are or will be.
Well, we will be once we get this outstanding amount resolved. But for this fiscal year, we've made all the payments.
There's no further business to come before the council. I would go to elected officials' comments. And forgive me, I kind of forgot who I started with last week, and I got the wrong sheet of paper that I brought from my office.
Oh, we're easy, Mayor. Take your choice.
All right. Yeah.
We're the
Thank you
easiest
for your
guys.
comments, and thank you for coming out tonight.
Okay. Mr. Hayes.
Okay, you know, each time and no disrespect to anybody, but each time I read something or hear something, I get more and more confused. We are current for this fiscal year, but then why do we need the money? That just doesn't make sense to me. Words have meanings. We are current for this fiscal year, which ends, I presume, the end of June of 14. So if we are current, why did we borrow the money? Now, if R doesn't mean R, then I don't know, we have to check with Bill Clinton to see if his is his. But yes, you can answer. Thank you.
We actually budgeted in this fiscal year the amount to cover the pension payment, so it's built into your expense budget for the city. That $2.6 million is not in the budget at all.
That's the one that we missed from last year that we took the tan for, and then we didn't get the emergency loan.
That's correct.
Okay. Is that Mr. Hayes?
No, that's it. I've had enough, I think. Thank you very much. You've had enough.
Mayor Pro Tem Keenan.
Yeah, I'll just be short. I just wanted to say, you know, as most of you know, I wasn't here last week, and I had opportunity to watch the the council meeting from last week on the internet. And I tried to make the point last Monday that with the small surplus that would be projected without the loan, that we could certainly have, anything could happen that could possibly put us in a deficit situation. And I found it a little ironic. I was sharing with Councilman Hayes during the break that Dr. Armstead had come up to the microphone and had said that he had done a study at the rec center and that he anticipated that we would have to put $500,000 into the rec center, which is not budgeted. I know a portion of, for some things was budgeted, but certainly not the $500,000. So that would have put us in a deficit. So I'm glad to see that he and I agree on that. But with that said, everybody have a good night. Thanks for coming out and staying so late.
Councilman Cisco.
Thank everybody for coming tonight.
Councilman Templin.
Thanks for coming tonight. It was a good meeting.
Oh, I'm looking for you on my list here. You had a cleanup tonight.
Oh, thank you, Ray. I really just couldn't vote in good conscience to request a $3.3 million loan without the knowledge of the retiree pension amounts and the years of service they had to get those pensions. I've requested this for a long while now, and I've never gotten anything. Maybe now Mr. Rizzi says he'll take it to the pension board, and hopefully they'll give me that knowledge so I can have better knowledge of what's going on in our city. Thank you again.
Emergency Manager, Ms. Parker, would you like any final words?
I just want to maybe comment, Councilman Hayes indicated that he requested some information, but the turnaround was just too quick, and the finance department could not produce everything. Now, we do have like the budget actual reports, and the quarterly report is due and should be up on the website, I'm hopeful by tomorrow. But that was really the issue, a matter of trying to get it all done.
Well, thank you.
Parker, is there anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know it was a long series of meetings, but hopefully we all learned some things about our city and its financial condition. And I wish everyone a happy holiday for the Christians. Our Easter is coming, and Passover started last night for our Jewish friends. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Supported.
Mr. Hayes has moved, Mr. DeJulio was seconded. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
It was real close to drawing.